Welcome back to my channel. If this is the first video you're watching, welcome. Please subscribe. There'll be plenty more videos like this coming in the future. What we have here is excellent vehicle, amazing condition, interior's immaculate, a little bit shady from a used car dealer. Unfortunately, it wasn't inspected before it was bought. It's still in amazing shape, still a great car, but there's a few things you need to watch out when buying from a used car lot. Dealers not so much, but used car lots for sure. Now, I've inspected this car before, and you see how nice that caliper looks. It's been painted. The brake pads are the same color. The rotor is the same color. That is a telltale sign that they're hiding wear and tear and rust. On the rear here, same thing. It has been painted. Now these parts are a little bit newer, but like, look at that pad. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually replacing the front brakes. I am going to clean up and service the rear brakes because the pads are still quite excellent. And then as well, this wheel bearing is making noise. So we're going to get that switched over, and I'll take you along on my brakes and show you a few other things to watch out for from a used car dealer. All right, let's get under the hood. As you can see, this engine compartment's nice and shiny. Now, with most reputable places, that's all fine and dandy, but most used car lots, typically when they do a really good clean in the engine compartment, they're hiding some stuff. So I'm going to grab a light and I'll show you a few things. The number one thing to look out for on a used Subaru is obviously oil leaks. Now, boxer motors, it's almost maintenance to fix oil leaks. They like to leak after a while, right? But amazing engines. You see I don't know if you can see it on camera, there's staining down here. That's partially the valve cover, partially the cam carrier. It's starting to leak. I don't think that was visible before when I first took a look at this. And there's a buildup of what is it? Moist oil there. And now it's not like rolling over the valve covers, which is good. So there's still plenty of time before we can address this leak. And the injectors, that one might be leaking right there. There is a buildup of dirt along the injector body. I'll have to take a look at it in a sec. That one's not as bad. That one is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a-okay. The belt is still good. It's a little bit on the dry side, but it'll last for a few more services, no problem. The brake fluid is kind of on the dark side. This probably hasn't been changed in a long time. We'll replace that. Underneath tells a different story as well. And the wheel studs are painted too. So this is where it becomes a lot more visible, just what they did. They smothered everything in silver paint, including the pad surface, including the boots for the slide pins. You got the cap for the brake fluid bleeder. Why would you do that? Unless you're trying to hide something. This is the front wheel. Also slathered. Oh, look at that. Yeah, disgusting. Slathered in anti-seize and fucking paint. But if I take you off and show you in behind, the rust starts showing. They don't even bother to do the whole job, just whatever's visible from the front. Same thing. You can see spots of rust coming through. Little chunk off there. This is probably anti-seize covered. Yeah, anti-seize covered in paint. Final rear wheel. It's more of the same. They're like they painted all over the anti-seize. Like, come on, man. So scummy. Let's explore this vehicle together here. So, as you can see, from the unexperienced eye, those brakes look okay, right? Well, if you come to the back, look at that rust lip. That thing is huge. And you got all that rust on there. That backing plate is still semi-okay. It's nothing to worry about. They did replace this one control arm. That was the used car dealer. They didn't replace this one, even though that lower control arm bushing's tearing. But this side as well, sorry for the lighting, is rusting pretty good. And you got roughly about 5 mil of pads on there. Can't really see that, but I'm replacing those pads and those rotors. For the general condition of the vehicle, it's in pretty decent shape. Yes, there's rust. Sorry for the lighting. This side is not really leaking. There is a slight leak in here. I don't see it there, but I don't know if you can see it back there, right in the center past the engine mount. That is a little bit of an oil leak. It's coming from the cam carrier. Now, it's nothing crazy at the moment. We can let that go for now, but keep an eye on it in the future. In the rear, coil springs, the campaign was done. The rear rotors, they were replaced more recently, and the pads as well. I don't know if you can see in there, they're pretty thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean everything up, clean the brake hardware up, and get that all nice and proper. Take all this crappy paint off of everything. And this side, same thing. I'm just going to recondition the brakes. Gonna leave the pads. They fucking, oh my god, there's some paint on the pad material there. Gonna have to do this wheel bearing. Might get interesting. Subarus are notorious for for being rather difficult to replace wheel bearings because they like to stay. At least this one doesn't have the Jesus bolt. For all your older Subarus, you know what I'm talking about. Big long bolt that also supports two of the rear arms. Love the new design. One thing to watch out for on older Subarus, the rear toe arm. This is what allows you to adjust the toe using that cam-eccentric bolt. These bushings tend to tear. It's really hard to see on camera, but that bushing's torn. It's not fully torn yet, but it's something to do in the future. This side as well too. You can see it almost touches. It is actually contacting the subframe there, so we'll get that changed sometime in the near future. Hello, beautiful. This is something you don't really see in BC, where you get exhaust shields rusting all the way through, especially on the rear of the car. Yes, on the front exhaust for sure, but we'll have to find an exhaust shield and replace this. I'm going to regret taking those bolts out. I don't know how much of this I'll film, but I'm going to do the front brakes, recondition the rear brakes, and do a brake fluid flush on this just to get her stopping nicely, and then replace that wheel bearing. I'll try and film some along with it. Later on I'll probably do videos just dedicated to doing like brake service and replacement of brakes and all that sort of stuff. This one was just to highlight, kind of be careful at used car dealers. Get your vehicle inspected by an independent shop or the Subaru dealer. Spend that, you know, $250 Canadian, which is like $20 American, to get the vehicle checked out. That way you can either use it as a bargaining chip to get the vehicle cheaper or look elsewhere. Now this vehicle needs a little bit of love, but it's in generally decent shape. A little bit on the rusty side, but it's not falling apart. So the main part of the frame is excellent. The subframes are excellent. So we'll recondition her and get her going for the new owner. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them down below. Subscribe if you like my content and want to get more videos like this. Mils. God damn, look at that rust. Wow. Careful not to snag the boots. That's a lot of rust buildup. You never want to let the main caliper hang by the brake line because it's quite heavy. You could wreck the brake line. So I always set it down here. I hang it by the coil spring, or I set it down on the lower control arm. We're going to compress these pistons in. A lot of fancy tools to do this. I like to see what's going on. So I use some knife picks or nip picks, or however you want to call it. Knife picks. Okay, so that one went in okay. Just ever so gentle. I'm not. That one went in okay. Now the other one is going to come out a bit if you're too heavy on it, but this is sliding okay. So there's no abnormal resistance from the pistons, which is good. So keep using this. We'll wait and see what. Oh, the slider pins. Okay, a little bit dirty, but that's fine. They're moving, that's good. The rubber on the lower pin looks pretty decent. Nice. So that's perfect. We'll get this crap pads out of the way. Oh my fucking god, that just happened on camera, didn't it? The pad material just fucking fell. Oh, this is crazy. The pad material just broke apart. Is a good thing. I told them I'm going to be replacing their pads. Holy shit. Now the rears look much newer, so shouldn't have this problem on the rear, but damn, used car lot, you got to be careful. The caliper mount bolts are 17 mil. I'm dyslexic, so I always gotta double, triple check which direction I need to take it. I like to use the double wrench strategy. Because the strut bolts get in the way for doing that top one. Nice that the rotor's loose. Make sure if your hardware comes with anything else on it, you keep it all together, because these can come off and lose them. Then when you put the bolts in, these go in too far and they can contact the rotor. Now I know on Eastern, let's see if we can get a better angle. Now I know out east in the Rust Belt, you guys like to put copper C's and stuff like this on there, but I've always subscribed to what I call the peanut butter jelly theorem. So if you put a bunch of goop on the hub, you put your rotor on, then you put your wheel on, and you torque it down, a lot of that goop is going to come out, but some of it won't. But then over driving, more of it can work its way out, and then you could actually loosen the wheel slightly. I don't like having any product on here when I put the rotor on, all that sort of stuff. There's ways of taking rusted rotors off. I don't like a chance, just a little bit of a chance that a wheel can fall off, so I make sure there's nothing on this. That's my preference. Other people can do their own, but that's what I like. Also, when you put goop on the threads, sometimes you don't get proper torque either. Ah! Lighting malfunction. Come on, stay there. Now those look nice. This just keeps the rotor a little bit more straighter, so when I'm putting the pads and the caliper bracket and the caliper back on, it doesn't keep it tight, but makes it easier for you. It's my first time doing a brake job with a camera on my face. Hopefully you guys like the view. This one's kind of glued on as well too. Let's check this pad. Oh, this one doesn't even want to come out. It didn't break apart, but you see that? See how there's that gap there? That is going to break apart. Almost makes me wonder if this vehicle's been sitting for a long time. Yeah, this one's got a gap in there too at the bottom. Clean this off first. Doesn't, oh, it's a spider crap mixed with goop. Doesn't appear to be any leaking or anything in the calipers, which is nice. The boots are still in okay condition. There's some slime all over this boot, but if it was brake fluid, you would see it spread out more, kind of like oil, or this is just slime people put on their brakes. Sorry, I'm in the way. Not going to remove all the crap, but most of it's kind of nice having a flat surface for it to rest against the pads. Just prevents noises. You get vibrations in the pads, and having a abnormal seat against it can cause that. So let's push these in. Yeah, very gently. Ever so gently, and the other side won't come out. Perfect. You see the boots are nice and in, they're not sticking out. There might be a little bit of air in that one. And blood. Sometimes you gotta fart these boots by popping them open. Oh, there we go. You see how it kind of like receded in a little bit? Yeah. These are just a tad bit swollen due to stuff people have put on this. And you see all the dirt in there? You don't need inch thick of anti-seize or whatever to put on brakes. If you do the brakes properly, they won't make any noise. just get a resting on the axle there. Stay. And these GoPros don't last that long with battery, eh? Righty tighty, lefty loosey. I don't know, I've always had a thing for doing brakes without power tools. Like I just started using my Milwaukee air ratchet, not air ratchet. I just started using my Milwaukee Insider. Love this freaking tool. Only downside, oh, I didn't do it that time. This 3/8 bit tends to come out really easy with the socket, but I guess my 14 mil is my most used socket, so it's the most worn. So far I love the Milwaukee tools. I haven't had a single issue with them. Got a drill, got a 3/8 impact driver. I've got a smaller 3/8 ratchet, the first one I got before the Insider was created. As soon as the Insider came out, I was like, oh, I had to have that. And it was worth every penny. Phenomenal tool. Alright, let's get this crap off. It's almost time for this to be replaced. Almost time. If we don't disturb it too much, it should be fine. And then by next brake job, you probably need a wheel bearing and we'll replace this backing plate. Alright. One new OEM rotor, like they like them. You can go with the aftermarket rotors. Akebono makes some decent stuff. I don't trust most aftermarket brands. Typically get a lot of noises, kind of like that air compressor's making right now. Aftermarket pads can be hit and miss too. Akebono, even Akebono, the OEM maker, their aftermarket pads for these sometimes can be rather poor. So I usually like OEM and I stick with OEM. I know it's kind of a, you know, me being a Subaru tech and all, but I've always stuck with OEM parts, especially sensors if you're replacing sensors. But brake parts are important. Let's clean off all this junk. Any rust on these or buildup can cause the pads to be tighter than usual, which usually means that they rest against the rotor as you're driving and wear down quicker. So you want to make sure you clean this caliper bracket up quite decent when you're doing a brake job. You just need to make sure the area in there and these two landings are clean of rust and buildup. really get a proper file, I mostly use this file for servicing brake pads, just cleaning up the edges, but it works pretty decent. Now, common mistake with these, you got two different kinds right there. We've got the long nose, none on that one. So there's a special way of putting it on these. You see how this caliper has the ridge here, but there's no ridge up here, so that long piece always goes there. It always goes to the bottom. Currently that's, you know, upside down, but it always rests in the bottom. I do these constantly, and I see other cars done, like at other shops or in someone's backyard, and these will be backwards, and somehow they manage to get it on there, but they're not doing anything, or the pads are upside down. Just a mess sometimes. We take our slider pins, clean them off, and we're going to throw on some Sill Glide. Now, in other areas, there's other products and stuff like that, but in the West Coast Canada, you don't need any crazy. Just a little bit of Sill Glide in there and throw her in. Make sure she moves in and out. Sometimes you'll get airlocked and you have to bleed the air and push her in, but these are sliding quite nicely. Quite nicely. Now, just a quick tip: if this rubber piece does not, like if it comes off that edge and pulls out a little bit and stops you from pushing it in, don't reef it in. Take like a small little screwdriver and lightly tuck it in as you're putting a little bit of pressure, and eventually it will just want to slide in. So be careful not to wreck that rubber boot or bushing or whatever you want to call it. And that's the passenger side. So now I'm going to do the other side off camera. See you back when I start prepping the pads. Alright, you want to start with a nice clean work area. If you're putting pads down on the table, you don't want to get any sort of contaminant on them. A little bit of brake clean. Now we got our pad shims. We got anti-seize in here, copper anti-seize. I've got my own, so I don't tend to use these, but it comes in handy if you're the do-it-yourselfer. You got some of that. I like these shims. They're a two-part, but they're together, so there's, instead of four, four for each side, you only have two. You got two different ones. The smaller ones are for the inside, the larger ones are for the outside of the pads. Now the easiest way to tell which pad is which is set them down. Always tip up. There, now we got the passenger side, driver's side. There's no mistaking it. Take a little bit of copper anti-seize. No, this is the West Coast way. You don't have to do a lot, just a smidge. Some people stick like adhesives to make the shim not move. I don't like that. Some people put an overabundance of anti-seize on there. I don't like that either. You don't want it all squishing out when you put the shim on. Okay. And just center it as best as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now with the outside pads, you've got these two things. You want to make sure, I just hang on to them, make sure they're not hanging over any of the edges. So if you see this, it's not hanging over. Otherwise that can cause interference with the pad sliding. There, perfect. Now these are ready to go on. Now, as per Subaru, they want you to put anti-seize, a little bit of anti-seize on the ends here. Most manufacturers do. A lot of times from the factory you don't see anything on them. I myself subscribe to not putting anything on here because when you're driving, say it's raining out, it will dry up. But if you get dirt and stuff and you've got anti-seize, it's going to collect the dirt and then it will collect the water and the water will stay around longer. So it usually equals to more rust buildup if you've got anti-seize on there. So I like to put them in dry. I've never had a problem with it, been doing it my whole career, and not a single comeback from brake noise doing that. So it's just something I've noticed. It's a West Coast thing. Now say if you're out East Coast, there's probably special products that you want to put on there because they've got a lot of harsher winters and all that sort of stuff, a lot of rust buildup. It's probably done a different way. You can do it your own way too if you want, but from what I've seen on the West Coast of Canada here, not putting anything on here seems to be the best route. And they're always slide, they're always free, and they don't make noise. All right, let's put these back on. Remember I said the large tabs go down to the bottom. Now as for torque specs, I'll overlay via simple text what everything's torqued to, because I don't know it off the top of my head, but my elbow torque wrench is relatively good. They say in the industry, torque to spec or cross-threaded, tight is tight. It's damn near impossible to get a torque wrench on this unless you have a special socket that allows you to get on the edge. Even some of the universals will catch the strut nut. So first set of brake pads going in. So we got the inside hardware always to the bottom. Can be a little bit tricky getting these in, but just take your time, have some patience, and they'll slide right in. So you've got, this is to release tension to pull the pad back. It sits on this piece right here. We got the squealer. So when you get down to roughly 2 mil, this starts hitting the rotor, starts making horrible noise. But as we saw with the last pads, if you look at that, they are already junk, but they didn't hit the squealer. I think these are just super old. This vehicle hasn't really had a lot of action as of late. Oh, almost. Try not to bend that tab on the bottom. There we go. Let's get this. You see that, how it comes back a little bit slightly? That's just to keep the pad off the rotor as you're driving. Improves pad life. So now we got those in, sliding quite nicely. They're pretty loose, which is what we want. A little bit of sill glide. So the caliper will have 3 main spots where it sits. So just a smidge, you don't need a crazy amount. And then just a smidge on the back. Always done that my whole career. That's the way I was taught. Never had a problem with it. Now we can take the caliper. We're not going to do anything with this paint. Paint is going to stay how it is. Make sure that's sitting nice. The ends of these slider pins, there's a flat space, so they have to sit kind of almost horizontal to the caliper to slide in and sit properly against that. And then these 14mm bolts go in the back. Just a little extra. Perfect. That is one side complete. Now when putting the caliper bracket on, normally you're going to be fighting with the rotor because the rotor is sitting way out, but with the wheel nut gently put on the stud, the rotor sits at a nice angle that it doesn't really interfere with putting the caliper bracket on. One other thing, you want to make sure that this brake hardware here is sitting nice and flat on the surfaces. If it's raised up and you go to put the pads in, you could have some trouble doing that. Ooh. Whoa! Lost you. Let's try this again. Technical difficulties. Come on. Big Jim, scoot it down. Outside, inside. If you're doing this for your first time, you're going to swear at this pad due to this, but once you do it a few times, you get used to it and you figure out the way to slip her in. But it will be frustrating the first couple times you do it. Just letting you know that. Put them back. Make sure to take this off if you're using it. It's always nice to go on a test drive and you lose your bungee. Okay, this side done. I'm gonna leave this off because I'm gonna suck some brake fluid. The owner was complaining about a slightly spongy brake pedal. Now, it was probably due to the pad condition and all that, but I'm still gonna suck some of that brake fluid out and refresh it. Okay, I'm gonna do the service on the rear off camera so I can speed this process up. I'm on a little bit of a time limit, but I'll show you a little bit with my brake fluid and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I just wanted to show you something. As I was talking before about not using anything on the pads. You see here how there's anti-seize on there? Hopefully it focuses for you. Look at all that dirt. There is a ton of dirt. Here, let me get some light. There is a ton of dirt build up. It's still a little bit wet, and it just collects, and it doesn't go away because it's gripping all the anti-seize and whatever fluids they put on it, the spray paint, and it just stays there. And then the water will stay there, and eventually it'll start rusting everything out. Good thing though that these pads are pretty much brand spanking new. I've already reconditioned them and cleaned them off. Get the edges nice and clean, and go from there. So I know West Coast, I try not to put anything on there so that doesn't happen. So I've got the brakes done, the rear is serviced, the front's replaced. Just going to do a quick brake fluid flush. Now the handy dandy reservoir, because I'm going to be doing a vacuum flush or vacuum bleed, however you want to put it. So I need, oh, maybe I should freaking close this thing first. That would work. Okay, so now this reservoir doesn't stay all too well, so I usually just gently find a way. Come on, just a little bit further. Just gently so you don't scratch the wipers there. Now she'll bubble all up. As you can see, add some light to the situation. Hey, all our calipers have 10 mil bleeders on them. I like to crack them open first. Oh, this one's crusty. Oh, I hope this... Let's make sure. Got some brake fluid coming out. Yep. Okay. Throw the vacuum bleeder on. This is where it gets noisy. This is my vacuum bleeder. Cheap Amazon thing, about $100. And we open up the bleeder. I don't know if you can see, but we got brake fluid going to the line there. I have to come over it. Woo. And now, as you can see, if my light cooperates, which it won't, we are now transferring fresh stuff into the reservoir and sucking out all the old crap. I'm going to do this for all four corners. You start from the furthest away from the reservoir, you go to the other rear side, and then you go to this side, and then you stop. The last one will be closest to the reservoir. And yeah, that's it. We'll go through roughly about almost a liter, I think it's 900 milliliters of brake fluid, and brake fluid will be changed. Okay, I'm just gonna get this done and we'll go for a test drive. Okay, most important part of the job is the test drive. Always double check your brakes. Always pump your brakes before you start the car. Watch out where you're going in the back. Ooh. Lovely car there. Oh, I gotta get the door here. Now, I completely replaced the front brakes. I serviced the rear brakes. I've also replaced the right rear hub. I didn't have that on camera because I was on a time limit and filming actually takes a while. Which I surprised myself. I still got this done in relatively good time. Getting better at this filming stuff. So, the whole point of this test drive is to, you know, listen for noise, listen for loose parts if you're horrible at torque and stuff. Also to bed the pads in. So we're gonna do a few hard braking maneuvers. The goal is to get up to 60 kilometers an hour. I don't know what that's in miles per hour, but in Canadian units it's 60 kilometers per hour. And we're gonna brake really hard. The goal is to brake as hard as possible without locking up the wheels. And then you let the pads cool down, or the rotors cool down a bit. That's way too fast. And you do it a few times. And this just gets the pads and the rotors set with each other. Gets the braking capacity at pretty much maximum before the customer takes it. Otherwise, their pedal won't feel properly, or proper English. I like it because people think you're freaking crazy on the road. 60 kilometers an hour. Brake as hard as possible without locking it up. That feels really good. Feels really good. Sorry about your stuff in the back. Bonk. Good thing this is a used car. One more. Oh. Alright, we'll get one more in right here. And brake. Oh yeah. Okay, she's feeling really good. No noises, pedal feels amazing. Got a little bit of brake fluid in the engine compartment. I'm just gonna wash it off with water here. And we'll get this customer on the way. Now a much safer vehicle, which is perfect. Only 118,000 K on it for 2016. Pretty good mileage. If you like what you saw, like and subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free. I'll try and get to all the comments. And have a good one. Thank you.